Do you know the Lord's Prayer? You might be surprised to learn, by the way, that there's more than one version of it. There's a new modern version as well. But anyway, do you know any of them? The Archbishop of York, Reverend Stephen Cottrell, now says that starting the Lord's Prayer with Our Father is problematic for abuse victims. Now, I've got to say, there's a train of thought here which is about the evolution of language. I'm a little bit cynical, and I think that what's happening here, though, perhaps, is the church realising that numbers of attendees are in decline. So now what they're trying to do is shuffle the deck chairs on the Titanic and go, right, well, maybe it's because a load of women have been abused by their dads or men or whatever. So if we change this sentence, it might get the women in. Am I being a bit cynical and wrong?
Well, maybe not cynical, but wrong, because what the church did probably actually about 50 years ago now was it drove away huge numbers of parishioners and worshippers by modernising its services, getting rid of tradition and making everything unfamiliar and putting it all new language. So we have, for instance, the problem that there used to be one version of the Lord's Prayer, which everybody knew, and now there are, I think, 3 or 4 modern ones which all conflict, which nobody knows. They got rid of huge numbers of other prayers. They got rid of a lot of the traditional hymns or made people sing them to the wrong tune. They changed absolutely everything, and they were surprised when people stopped coming. This won't make people come. I've had one or two dealings with Stephen Cottrell. I do laugh a bit about this, but there's a simple point here. If you were a Christian, then you have to base your religion on what the Christian scriptures say, and there are passages in the Gospels in which our Lord Jesus Christ says, this is how you should pray, and he begins the prayer, Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. If the actual founder of the religion says this, then I'm afraid the current Archbishop of York doesn't really have a very heavy role in revising it. If he doesn't like the Christian religion, there are others he can turn to, but that's what it says, and there isn't really any getting away from it.
Alex?
I agree, and I'm afraid, sadly, it just demonstrates how poorly the church of which I'm a communicant member is led. The Archbishop of York seeking to outdo the Archbishop of Canterbury in asinine and facile remarks. The kind of cultural vandalism Peter rightly identifies, stripping out of beautiful language and which people attach real meaning to. If you go to a funeral, you don't want it to sound like an oration from a local deputy town clerk letting you know about the municipal waste collection changing. You want it to have eternal echoes of the voice of God. I mean, this is that final step too far that they won't actually manage to do because it's so absurd. But at a more minor, changing the Lord's Prayer, I mean, but at a more minor level...
You think it won't pass?
No chance. At a more minor level, they've been chipping and chivying away at this incredible edifice that they've been lucky enough to inherit throughout. And it's this strange kind of mindset which believes that there is a glorious year zero that we're now in. Everyone who came before us is ignorant and stupid and some kind of bigot. And all we need to do to work out where they were in the past is work out how bigoted they were. And we have a unique enlightenment in and of ourselves. The first reason that is facile is that if you take that approach, in the end, you're asking the next generation to judge you and say what kind of bigot you were when they come to pass things. But the second thing, sorry, I'm just going to finish my thought.
No.
The second thing that it does is to take an institution uniquely built on heritage and tradition and trash what it is best at. So just as, stripping out altars and stripping out pews and replacing them with cardigan-wearing trendy vicars who said they were just like you kids, hey, I'm so trendy, didn't save the church. Neither will this. In the end, the congregation that you've got is the one you should be trying to hang on to, and they drive it away with things like this, like mad.
The other thing is, how is it that in the age of the tower block and instant mashed potato, we think we are the people who know better than hundreds of years of art, beauty, music and literature? It's astonishing. The greatest poet of our age, W.H. Auden, said when these changes came in the 80s, why spit on your luck?
Correct.
And it absolutely that sums up the whole thing.
You only have to look at
amazing piece of good.
You only have to look at the churches that our forefathers built compared to the churches we build now to realise how much wiser the church was when those things were built in their sense of beauty and architecture and language than we are now. So just don't mess with it. In a generation or two, it'll come good.
I mean, one thing, who am I to tell anybody this, but it seems to me that the Archbishop of York might need to be reminded of one thing that ministers of religion are supposed to show is humility, and humility in the face of what they've inherited from the past is quite strong. So I think there are things which you haven't got the standing to replace or change. You're a custodian of something you've inherited, and you must hand it on undamaged to the future. There's a limit to how much messing around. You can repair it, you can keep it standing.
Yes.
But tinkering around with it to the point where it is no longer what you inherited, you're not even entitled to do.
That to which you point is a much wider cultural phenomenon, which sees people entrusted with the responsibility for the curating of museums, seeing it as their role to trash their collections, give bits of it away, and denigrate it with descriptions on the side, rather than actually curating and
we see so much
enhancing
of this. We see, and they're turning. If you know thoroughly, for instance, the great plays of Shakespeare, then I don't mind particularly if you know them. If somebody comes along and says, "This is a different version of this. We'll do it in modern dress." But if you've never been taught, if you've never seen Hamlet or Macbeth or the great history plays as they should be, then the tinkering around is an indulgence, which you aren't really entitled to do. And at the moment, we're not teaching people these treasures at all.
Yes.
They simply don't know them, and they won't be able to pass them on to their children, or indeed pass much of the rest of. It's a symptom of something much wider. This inability to accept what we've inherited, or even see the good in it, and a constant desire to change in the short term. And I think it was Dean Ing, one of the great churchmen of the early 20th century, who said that anybody who marries the spirit of the age will very soon find himself widowed or divorced.
Yes. Because anyone, those sadly affected by this kind of idiocy must remind themselves that it is temporary. To coin a phrase, if you are looking at the state of the current Church of England, looking at priests who spend all their time on offence archaeology, rather than with a vague acquaintance with the belief in God, as far as I can tell, you must remind yourself that they too, this too shall pass, and you should keep the faith.
But never forget, at the same time, the very large number of Church of England clergy who do a very hard job in parts of the country where nobody else even goes.
Those are the people cheering on when we say the kinds of things we're saying tonight, because none of their bishops do.
Well, are you cheering this on? Tim says, Michelle, most people don't even realise just how much Christianity shapes the society that we live in. Our church is way more important than many people will acknowledge. Why are we messing with our heritage and our history? And